Who do you think Arnold is?
Well, I've got a theory. Could be Bernard, a robot Bernard. No, something isn't right there. I've got a theory. Could be Dolores. He hid himself inside a massive robot mind. Yes, I've got a theory. We should podcast fast. Every week, a new hot take. We cannot take them back. I remember the days when Bernard was Arnold and Arnold was Dolores and Dolores was the man in black and the man in black was the man in white and it was all strings on a wall. It was all so all over the place and now it's all just a straight line. Straight towards discussing the first two episodes of Westworld, of course, in Westworld Theories, your favorite Westworld podcast. We're here to talk about the first two episodes of Season 3, A New World? We will see. My name is Jacob Burrows.
My name is Jim Scampoli, and I mean, the more things change, the more they stay the same, because now, I mean, we're already getting kind of hints of someone's brain circle could be in someone else's body. Charlotte isn't Charlotte. Maybe it's the man in black. So we can get back to those days, even though it is a, quote, whole new world. And wow, what a time it's been. Last episode aired of season 2 was on June 24th, 2018. Who remembers where we were as we aired season 3?
I think that that's something that they've used to their advantage in a way. Well, maybe not ratings-wise, but story-wise. Like, if you look at the viewership there, I'll pull it up just now. Like, if you look at how many people watch something as an indication of the level of buzz that a show has, you can see that it started out the first season with a fair few people watching it, but it actually grew over the course because it was building momentum and people were getting more and more into it. Now, season 2, very controversial season where things were kind of made more convoluted, even more convoluted than the first one. And like, I watched this with my girlfriend and I had to mansplain to her what happened last season. And I only remembered because we did the podcast. Like, she'd forgotten all about the big rift in space and people being uploaded and all this shit. So how much did you remember, Jim?
I didn't remember any of that. I had to pull up the wiki real quick as I was starting the first episode of season 3. And yeah, I remembered it as I started to read, almost like a host myself, as I was unlocking my memories and being like, oh yeah, the Valley Beyond the Wall, or whatever the hell it was called. And I was like, oh yeah, and this person died. But it's like, you know, you don't really need to remember who died because they're back. I mean, spoilers, kind of, I guess not really. I mean, the people are back, or they can be back, or maybe there's a construct where they're back. I mean, it is Westworld, folks. One question I have to ask, though, is not that, well, I mean, this is very apt because we're discussing episodes 1 and 2 here. So we're going to probably jump around a bit. And I'm going to bring up Game of Thrones because Westworld also brings up Game of Thrones. So it's not fully out of line. But in a weird way, they are connected because Westworld came out kind of, maybe not the peak of Game of Thrones fandom, but around there. And it kind of had that shine a bit of like the latest HBO sci-fi fantasy type show. Yeah, sexy, high elevated genre. Like, I feel like it was getting shine of like, hey, we love Game of Thrones. Here's like a future version of that. Let's watch this. But now that Game of Thrones like crashed and burned so hard in so many people's minds. I mean, I guess Westworld already did that to a lot of people between season 1 and 2, but I don't think it helped it in general, just the way people reacted to Game of Thrones, where now they're like, oh, Westworld's back? You're not going to get me on this one, HBO. Do you think something here, or?
I think you're onto something for sure. And like, even like I was mentioning with the numbers there, we had like about 2 million people watching the first episode of season 1, about 2 million people watching the first episode of season 2, and then less than 1 million people for the third season, and dropping off even more there on the second episode. Again, these numbers, like, what does it even really mean when it comes to HBO? Because everyone streams it anyway, or just, you know, pirates it. So who knows what that actually means? But yeah, I think there's definitely that aspect. Even if it's not something you consciously think, it is like Westworld was literally hailed as like, could this be the next Game of Thrones? So it is kind of connected, and it's definitely the same kind of vibe as you were saying, elevated genre, shit. Like we take this culture that used to be shit and we make it really sexy and high production value. Basically, the culture that used to be despised because being a nerd and so on, it's been cool for, well, decades now, basically. So because of that, we just make it super sexy and everyone will love it. Now, the question, they are doing only 8 episodes this season, I wanted to mention as
Ooh,
well,
I
which
didn't
I
know
think is
that.
a good thing. Yeah, because I think we always said that about Westworld, that there's always like 2 episodes in the middle where you're like, fuck this. And then it's like, will they win you back after that or not? So maybe we skip those episodes this season. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to come off as too negative here, because I feel like if you go back to our podcast, we were a lot more positive than most people, especially coming off the end of season 2, if I remember correctly. We were kind of gearing up for like, all right, they're opening things up. They didn't wipe the slate clean, but they've put things in motion for a new start, and I think they are taking advantage of that. It's just I think it's worth discussing what the I guess the buzz, like you said, the buzz on what Westworld has become almost 2 years later after season 2. Because I mean, even season 1 to season 2 had a pretty long break. I mean, I don't think it was as long as this, but I don't know if the show's lived up to people's expectations to continually do that, where it also, I think, kills people's confidence in the show, because it feels like after each season, the writers are like, oh, what did we fuck up? We need to go hole up somewhere and, back to the drawing board, and let's figure out where we want to go from here. Which I remember you were kind of praising that after season 1 when we were talking about season 2, because you were like, hey, well, it's a good thing if they take some time to plan things out and get a grip on the story. But what are your thoughts on the break now?
Right. No, you're right. The first season there was in 2016, so that's a pretty long time ago to be on season 3 or something here in 2020. Yeah, no, I've always, if you listen to our other coverage of the podcast of shows such as Game of Thrones at showswhatyouknow.com, you'll know that I'm always the one who's like, writing's hard, you guys. Give him a chance. Like, come on, give him more time. All a writer really needs is time. And season 2 of Westworld proved that I was wrong about that. And then I was saying the same thing about Game of Thrones, where they're taking extra time for the last season. So I'm like, thank God they're going to get it right. And no, they didn't quite nail it for me. Not for a lot of people either. So that in particular is like fair enough. Yeah, maybe they didn't. Maybe it doesn't make a difference at all. But I will say, having watched the first 2 episodes, I'm more hyped about Westworld at the moment than I've been since season 1. Despite all the flagging viewership and buzz is low at the moment, I personally, what I'm getting out of it is better right now. Now, they may fuck me on that, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But after the first 2 episodes, I'm actually more hyped about Westworld. After the first one, I was like, damn, I want to watch more Westworld, which I know it sounds dumb. We have a Westworld podcast. Of course, it's interesting to watch and discuss it, but the actual enjoyment factor, because what I always said about season 2 was at the end of season 2, everyone seemed to feel about Westworld what I did after season 1. Because I kind of felt that way at the end of season 1. Now, I liked both of them to a certain extent. But for me, it hasn't been as dramatic of a shift of like, I used to love it so much and now I hate it. In fact, now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, cool. They're doing something that feels different. You might disagree, but it feels different to me. It feels more clear and straightforward. How are you on that front, Jim?
I mean, with the first episode, I'm with you on that. The second episode, not so much, but I think it's because the second episode is bogged down so much of like going back to Westworld, and then but also not going back to Westworld. Like, we're literally going back to Westworld in one plot line, but then we're going back to a construct of Westworld in another plot line. So it's, I mean, if you're frustrated with Westworld, it's not really easing your mind, in my opinion, because now they have to describe how like this is a construct, and I like, obviously you're living the life of a computer program, so you're seeing it played out in the way Maeve goes through and kind of hacksaws it on her own. But at the beginning of that episode, I'm like, oh no. like because they were in War World or whatever, Nazi World, whatever you want to call it, which
Yeah.
we get a hint at in the post credits of the first episode, which again was like when I saw that I was like, oh no, because before they make the reveal that it's a construct, I'm just like, they just put Maeve back in the park, like what? Who are these stupid people? And I'm sorry I'm jumping around. I know I'm talking about the second episode because even though I like Maeve a lot as a character and I'm happy to have her back, it feels like we have to jump through these hoops to get her back because they killed her off at the end of season 2, and I guess as she was on the way to good.
No, I was gonna say total news to me. Didn't remember that at all, but that sounds right. That sounds right because they left the park and they all had all the brain orbs or whatever. So yeah, go on, Jim.
Yes. So, but I mean, I guess there was a question that maybe Dolores still had her brain orb because she had like a bunch in there. You didn't quite know whose was who, but now I assume it wasn't Dolores that took hers because the way the episode 2 plays out. But like, the problem is that in both season 1 and 2 with Westworld is they both played these kind of long cons for these twists, and the twists were not good enough to justify the time put into them. And so in season 3, in both of the first episode where they have that guy that's just being like, it would be like Delos to put a simulation on within a simulation. And we also have this introduction of this new orb that is basically an artificial intelligence that potentially predicting like people are no different than hosts. And then episode 2 introducing that Maeve's in a construct. So now everything I'm watching, I'm like, this could be a construct. When are they going to get into how it's a construct? Aaron Paul is clearly a host or a virus or something like, and I don't want to watch a show that way, but it's hard not to watch Westworld that way. Going back to the first episode, it does feel fresh. It feels different. It feels like a new twist on Westworld, which is kind of fun and exciting, but it also is like he's pulling out of his phone and doing GTA missions. So are they giving me hints that this is another construct? This is not the real world. Basically what I'm trying to say is I'm conflicted. I definitely want to like the show, and I like what they're doing for the most part, but I'm like, I feel like I've had the rug pulled out from under me a few times that I'm a little wary to be all in.
Yeah, it's hard to trust someone who keeps going like, oh, this is what it is. This is what it is. Fuck you. You thought that's what it was? Fuck off. Which first episode, I just managed to switch that part off for myself in my brain. So that's good. I was just very much enjoying it on a surface level, which is what I've kind of always enjoyed Westworld mostly when it's doing that. And when it's a big mystery and whatever, I know this is totally counter to how everyone enjoys Westworld and thinks about it, but I just kind of liked when it was like, we have to get from A to B. We're in the park. We need to do this. This is what's in our way. We have to get past this thing. There's a plot there. Instead of like, oh, very strange symbol in ground. White man, look for water, but water is electricity. I don't know. All these mysteries woven together. I've never gotten as much from it. And episode 2, your criticism or the feeling you're describing, I definitely felt that too. Especially like a little bit into episode 2, I'm like, oh no, this whole thing's gonna be in the park, isn't it? Because I was like, it wouldn't make sense at this point to cut to Dolores doing some shit and being taken care of by Aaron Paul, having their whole Romeo and Juliet thing that they're inevitably gonna have. But yeah, no, I was like, oh, we're in the park for this one, huh? But it was tempered a bit by like, I felt like that's it for the park, and it was kind of it was a bit convoluted the way to get Maeve out of there, but it was basically like Bernard and Maeve. Well, Bernard got his I guess he's gonna have a buddy cop thing with Stubbs now. So that'll be fun, I guess. But it was basically just to get Maeve out of there, tie up loose ends is my hope. If you're right in that they're setting up a thing where this and this and this is going to be a simulation later, I'm not going to enjoy that most likely. The sort of setups and payoffs I've been seeing in at least these first couple episodes. The fact that they reveal that and get it sorted and over with in one episode, I like about them being in a construct world or whatever. I also liked Aaron Paul was having these conversations with someone called Lawrence, and there was just enough for me to go, I bet Lawrence is like an AI part of the program or whatever. But I thought that just a little bit ahead of it being revealed, so I got to feel smart. It was just, a little bit of a tiny Westworld theory within the episode, rather than it being a huge fucking thing where we get to know all about Lawrence and him. Like, it just serves the purpose of the plot rather than overtaking the plot with all of these theories and convoluted things going on. So I hope that's what they continue with.
Yeah, and I think that was purposely edited to tip their hand. Like, I don't think they wanted it to be so much of a reveal. I'm sure for some people maybe it was, but I'm with you. Like, I think the show did enough to be like, yeah, you kind of know where we're going here. And I do agree with episode 2. Like, if it is kind of that's the farewell to the park, then I'm completely fine with it. Because, yeah, I don't want to be back at the park, especially after season 1 and season 2. So it's fine if Bernard has to go back there to get Stubbs and then get his new tablet because he doesn't trust himself. There's some interesting seeds there for where he can go now, as long as we're not like going back to the park or finding out a new park or going to the Game of Thrones park, which all like, because one of the things I was going to talk about, well, first I want to bring up, you mentioned, Lawrence, Aaron Paul and Kid Cudi reunited, Need for Speed. If we remember the movie Need for Speed, starring Aaron Paul, starring Kid Cudi, we get to see both of these actors back in their prime in episode 1 of Westworld. So got to give a shout out to that. Also got to give a shout out to Marshawn Lynch, who has a cameo. And I know you're a Swedish boy, also currently living in Ireland. But Marshawn Lynch is the running back for the Seattle Seahawks. He was the like muscle guy that like Aaron Paul would run into on his missions.
With lit up t-shirt text sort of thing?
Yes, yeah. And I hear he might play a big part in this season, so that's kind of weird / interesting. Is
he an actor?
No, not really. I mean, he's a colorful guy in his interviews, so we'll see. Maybe he is an actor. He's going to surprise us. But one of my things I was going to point out is that the reason why some of this stuff doesn't work, there's a lot of Westworld that does work, but the reason why some of it doesn't work is because the show sometimes is so self-serious and it doesn't quite embrace some of the campiness. So it comes off as the show thinks it's much smarter than it is. Like, especially with the flagship program is Rehoboam. And it's like the first king of the kingdom of Judah and the successor of Solomon and a grandson of David. Like, that's what the program's named after, or the artificial intelligence. And it ties into the Bible. And then, of course, Aaron Paul's character is named Caleb. And they're trying to do all that stuff. And it just comes off as kind of dumb sometimes because the show is too self-serious, except when they're weirdly not. Like with their Game of Thrones, where they have D&D, were in that scene. You saw that, right?
What? No, I didn't. Oh no!
When the guys with the dragon, that was D&D talking about like, we're gonna ship these pieces off to wherever they said.
Yeah, no, I was looking at the dragon, so I was like, is that Drogon? So I didn't even realize we had D&D in there. The writers of Game of Thrones, if you're not up to speed on that, dear listener. That's kind of rough, Jim. Or did you like that? What did you think about that?
But the thing is, I didn't really like it. But when I watched the first episode, I was kind of thinking I wish that Westworld would embrace their campiness a bit more. And in a way, they kind of answered my plea. But then I was like, no. I guess if the show did a little bit more of that, like, I mean, sometimes I like the score they're using in a lot of I mean, I don't remember much of the other seasons, but they're using kind of more of that cyberpunk, like 80s style, like synth score. And that's kind of fitting with some of the stuff they're doing here in season 3 now that we're in like, hopefully the real world and not a construct or a simulation. I'm sorry, I have to. We say it as a joke, but we made other things as a joke and they became true in the past.
Yeah, like them being on the moon, which they clearly are. Yeah.
But if we start getting into more like cyberpunk, like, techno terrorist stuff, which it seems like we're seeing hints of, I'm in for that. I want this. But I do wish it would embrace maybe the campiness a little bit more, so it didn't come off too much as like up its own ass sometimes. But then again, I could be wrong, because I feel like that Game of Thrones shout out is that them doing that, and it didn't quite work that well for me.
Yeah. So what you're describing about like a high budget cyberpunk show, I'm like on board from the ground level, I'm like, fuck yeah, like a cyberpunk show that is just like really, I don't know, high budget and like has some thought behind it, but doesn't try to complicate things too much with things being inside things, etc. Russian doll of storylines and everything. That's what I want. So maybe I'm just seeing it because that's what I want to see, but that seems to be what they're saying in the first episode.
I agree.
Is what we're doing. Aaron Paul's in it now. To find myself on board. There's a quote here I pulled up. It was reported in Entertainment Weekly in July of.
I'm sorry. You go ahead. I keep interrupting.
Technology got in the way there, but yeah. So Entertainment Weekly in 2019, Nolan and Joy, they said that season 3 would have a much more comprehensible storyline, with Nolan stating this season is a little less of a guessing game and more of an experience, with the hosts finally getting to meet their makers. But they also did say that they were able to make a more. So yeah, while they were able to make a more direct narrative, it's still true that they're very lucky that they have a place where HBO lets them make the show they want to make without having to dumb it down. So that's what they said. That's what I'm taking at face value. Episode 2 was a little bit like, but yeah, I don't know. I hope that's what they do.
I think you're right. I think I'm just being overly cautious, and I'm not trying to like poo-poo anyone, because obviously if you're listening to a podcast on Westworld, you like the show, and I know it might not sound like it sometimes, but I do like the show. And I like I said, the stuff I mentioned I'm in for, and if that's what they're talking about, great. And I like the first episode a lot. I like, Dolores, getting her resources and money, getting revenge on, these this tech fat cat guy who I guess got his jollies murdering Dolores in the park, and then, did it to his first wife, and now he's abusing his new wife, and then she comes in and gets to be all kick-ass and cool and like swim in the pool and still control the electronic locks, and put little glasses on him, make him relive his memories. It's just things like the Riho bomb, however you say it, because yeah, that's a big artificial intelligence that I guess apparently makes people like hosts in a way, where it kind of predicts your like what people are doing, and now we're getting into free will type stuff, which I guess is good, but it's also dangerously becoming the Matrix. And I think even the actor that plays Sarek, I think wasn't he in the Matrix as well, as like kind of the same character, or I might be confusing him actually with a different actor.
I'm honestly not sure. We'll look into that for season for the next episode of Westworld Theories, but I what you just said sparked a thought in my head, which is that besides the similarity with Game of Thrones and the development there, it kind of reminds me at this point a little bit of The Handmaid's Tale. Because, going past, we have a podcast discussing that as well called Gilead Gazette, by the way, if you're interested. You can find it at showswhatyouknow.com. But season 1 of The Handmaid's Tale is based on a book, and then they go beyond the book in season 2 and on, and it kind of becomes more like a revenge fantasy. Well, we have a lot more to say about that on Gilead Gazette, but season 1, it has a rich text to pull from, and then it becomes more of a simple revenge fantasy. Well, it all goes wrong as well, so it's not exactly a fantasy, but there's that. And then in the next few seasons, we sort of get revenge. I definitely get that vibe, because a handmaid is very similar to a host in this. And so seeing Dolores doing the things you said, basically taking revenge, it is very much like, here's the payoff you've been waiting for a long time. and that's satisfying just in itself. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I had a point with that. It just struck me that there's a similarity there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I like they've been building up the Dolores and Maeve showdown, which is one of the best hooks of the show right now. Not like doing twists and stuff. And of course, they're building it up still here. And so we got ourselves like a Professor X Magneto situation going on, where like we kind of root for Dolores with her guns ablazing, but we also root for Maeve as well. But it's not also not like you know, in episode 2, Maeve's not about being some sort of hero anyway. She's about her own interest. Then we got Bernard in the mix. So you know, they're doing some interesting stuff, and there is a lot of potential. So I'm hoping for the best. And then once we find out that Caleb is also a robot, that's going to be even better.
No, that's the part. That's exactly what you're talking about. Early on in the first episode, I am watching Westworld now, going, "This guy better not be a fucking robot," you know.
I mean, he's working with robots. Why is he working with robots if he's not a robot?
What he's just. I think the whole point of this is going to be, because it's kind of obvious, like the way it's set up, where Aaron Paul saves is gonna save Dolores, bring him to hers, and they're gonna bond, and maybe they won't fuck. Fine, I'm sure they'll fuck in the fanfic, but they'll have this. You know, she will start to understand humans and start to understand that like lower class humans are basically like hosts, and that's gonna ring totally hollow if he is actually a host.
Yeah.
She's not gonna get her whole thing right now is fuck humanity. So when he nurses her back to health, she's gonna be like, oh wow, you're also like not as fucked, but it's not great for you either. And that's how we're gonna get Comrade Dolores to bring us all wealth and equality.
Well, I mean, and especially because, well, I guess you're right. It could go either way because, I mean, they're purposely framing Aaron Paul opening his eyes when he's waking up, much like when Dolores wakes up. We also do see that an anomaly is detected by the, because, you know, in the first episode, we keep seeing the circle and how it's, I guess that's the artificial intelligence or what have you. So, I mean,
yeah, I had that as a note as well. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to say that one seems like such an obvious thing that it doesn't feel like they're fucking with you. Where in season 1 and 2, it would have been like something that's totally impossible to interpret. Where here it's like it's clearly the artificial intelligence. We keep telling you what it's doing, and this is what it's doing. So
yes. Now, also, I mean, they're probably just doing that just to show like parallels, like you said, if the idea is more so that Aaron Paul or Caleb can be a person that learns from a host and a host can learn from a person, they're showing that there is a common ground where even as a person you have your day-to-day, your almost your own little narratives that you have to play out. And I'm almost positive I think one of the creators said something similar in an interview of like, you know, where they're not much different than us. You know, we wake up, have our routine, we go to work, we're playing out our own
raped and murdered. Yeah.
Playing out our own little programming each day, our own little narratives. So, and then I guess what we'll have to unite against the common enemy, the big orb. That big orb with red lights. Red lights are bad.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like Westworld is always doing this thing because they have a couple of years between seasons. It feels like from season 1 to season 2, they decided there's no way they had it planned from the start that it's going to be about big data. Like there's no way they had planned that it's actually about analyzing everyone's behavior and how that can be used outside the park. Because that was a big thing where the reveal that the hats had a thing scanning their brains all the time when they're in the park. Yeah. And you know, that is the first season came out in 2016. There's no way they thought about that before 2016. It's only in 2016 and afterwards that we've become more aware of the role that data plays in our lives and in our privacy or lack thereof, and how everyone's online activities is used to predict their behavior and all this stuff. All of that was baked into the show because of events in 2016 and afterwards. So I think we're basically, because they have 2 years between each season, they just have the opportunity to kind of try to reinvent the show and make it more relevant by putting like parallels to what's going on in real life into the show. So yeah, maybe it will be more about class warfare, or
Well,
maybe it will be a big thing, like you said about all of data is bad, so destroy data. But what if you do destroy data, and then we're all fucked? I don't know.
well, and especially, I mean, bringing up that thing about the park scanning people's brains, and I guess that was to what, like upload their consciousness, and like you can almost be immortal. But then again, if they're doing that, but there's already this big orb that exists that kind of knows what you're gonna do, I don't know. Like, is it about trying to capture that tech? Like, is that tech somehow combined, or it's just kind of like you said, it's not like they ever had an idea that when they were writing season 2, that in season 3 there would be this artificial intelligence that can predict people's behavior and choices.
I think they stayed in the park for so long, partially because they didn't know what the best story to write outside the park was. Like, they
Hmm.
could have gone outside the park in season 2. I think at the end of season 1, we were kind of ready to do that. And they were doing that incrementally, but just the fact that basically season 2, as far as I remember it was taking place over the course of like 1 week or something. So very little actually happened, despite all the stuff actually happening.
Yeah.
But the thing I understood from the data, now that you mention it, I'm like, yeah, it was something about becoming immortal, wasn't it? But I think that was for a very select few. And in
Yeah.
general, it was more about, scanning the rich and powerful of the world. But you're right. If there's no way the writers knew that there was a big orb that predicted everyone's movements anyway. So I don't know.
Well,
I honestly don't know.
let me ask you a question. Does this mean that we're not on the moon? Like, or is there still a chance?
There's no way we're not. There's no way we're not on the moon. I'm still convinced we're on the moon.
There's still a
And this is
chance that the park is on the moon.
yes, absolutely. I don't care about the China Sea. That's all construct. We're definitely on the moon. And I think for the next few episodes, we'll see. I've sort of checked in on the Reddit. You got to check the Reddit. Well, you got to either check the Reddit or stay the fuck away from the Reddit. But there aren't even, like, as far as I've seen, big popular theories or anything. It's all just memes. And I'm like, works better for me. Even though our podcast is called Westworld Theories, it's still like, just overthinking it made the show worse for me often. Again, I do a podcast on it, so what am I talking about? But yeah, lots of fun memes on there, and people just enjoying the ride from what I see. And I'll keep tabs on it for the next few weeks, and we'll see if any big theories develop. But right now, I do like that the theories that we see. The only theory we're waiting to be proved or disproved is Westworld going to be a good show now? Is
Yeah.
it going to be a linear, easy to comprehend story where they do trust the audience, to think for themselves, but they don't make it so convoluted? That's my theory, and I'm hoping to see it proved.
Well, and you know that one of the tough things, I mean, this is kind of a little bit off what you're talking about, but seeing a future world like they're laying out here, like what might be the real world of Westworld, or might be a simulation. I have to preface it each time. It's hard not to just pick up on Black Mirror comparisons, though.
Yeah.
I guess it's just like any way around it. Like, what, in the 50s, the future was always looked a certain way. People had big, like, robots that had floppy arms, and they had spaceships like Buck Rogers or some shit. So I guess now all our futures, at least from the 2010s and 2020s, all our futures look like Black Mirror. Maybe you don't have they do mention a chip, or they mention something about getting your points up or your stats up, which kind of is like that. I guess what in the real world, what China or someone has like social points, or of course there's that Black Mirror episode. They don't quite do the little disc on the side of the eye, but he's got a little earpiece, or everyone has an earpiece that they put in. So, I mean, I'm not like calling anything out, but I'm just saying it's hard to get away from that Black Mirror version of the future. That's why everyone pictures where we're going.
Yeah, no, and it's still like, we still kind of have phones in the future because we have phones now, and like we can't really imagine the next big thing, like in how, a 50s future thing, we'd have a version of something that's very common in the 50s, but bigger or whatever and more futuristic. Whereas Aaron Paul is on his phone and there's an app where he, does crime, which is fun. Yeah, one of the speaking of like old sci-fi, One of the tropes I didn't really love is when Maeve just asks people to do the square root of -1,
Mm,
and
very
they get
Terrence
stuck in
Howard.
a loop.
It's very Terrence
What did you
Howard.
say?
Very Terrence Howard as well. If you follow Terrence Howard, he's all about the square root of 1 and how it
Mm.
breaks math. So I think that was inspiration from that. But yeah, you're right. It's like the Star Trek thing of like, but if you're supposed to protect people, wouldn't that mean that you would have to destroy them to protect them from themselves?
It
And then
just
Peter's
feels
like,
like
ah,
such a yeah. It just feels like such a lost in space, like danger, Will Robinson, and like we will ask the robots a question and then it will explode. Like it's such a thing that I'm like, oh yeah, they're doing the thing, huh? Couldn't think of anything else. Just introduce more complexity and make it break. But then I'm like, oh, it's okay. Episode 2's over now. Episode 2 is over. It's okay.
one of the things that I thought was weird, and I mean, and this is just more nitpicking. Well, because I mean, of course, we got the whole Aaron Paul using the app for his crime. And I mean, he'd always say, I don't do personals. I assume that means like killing people, kidnapping people, like even interacting. He likes to do, grind quests or something where you just go get an object and bring it somewhere else, apparently.
Yeah.
But
I
then,
guess like an ATM or whatever, yeah.
yeah, but then even at the end, like when he kind of starts to intersect with Dolores, it just felt kind of sloppy to me that, I don't know, he shows up, he delivers a thing. They have like a weird tense standoff where the guy puts a gun in his face and he's like, oh, guns, they ain't no thing. I don't give a shit. Like he's being like a tough guy. And then he just walks, like just kind of strolls away. And everyone's just like, yep, there he goes. Walking away.
That was really weird. But then I was like, he drove the car there. How else is he going to get out of there, Jim? He drove their car there and they wanted the car, right?
Is that what it was? But then also like minutes after he walks away, there's like the gunshots, I believe, or something. Or I guess maybe the car drives away before the gunshots happen. But then they kind of end up back in the area because she's chasing him down, or I don't know. It just felt weird because he just strolls off and like there he goes, the coolest guy in the game.
He strolls off. Yeah, that was a bit weird. And then also, the thing I was thinking when he comes back, I was like, I'm glad that they set up the app and had him deliver a thing at all, because that means it makes sense to me that their paths can cross, him and Dolores. Yep. But yeah, it probably wasn't executed the most smoothly, especially when he's like, you ain't even the first guy to shoot me in the head. I'm like, such an unnecessary cool guy line where it would be a much cooler guy thing to just not be a dick about it, you know? Like, what's going on over there? Since when is it his job to ask, like, wait, what's in that bag I just delivered? Everyone's just kind of like, I don't know. I don't need to know. Fuck it. I don't want to know. I don't want to get involved in this crime shit. But I guess because he's in his weird introspective thing. And then he talks to Kid Cudi and gets it all out of his system. I guess that scene could have been used a bit better to set up him disengaging from the program. Like maybe if he was in some actual, like if he experienced actual fear or something, or I don't know, if he had a more jarring experience, because it's played as like he doesn't have a jarring experience at all. So maybe if he did that, it would make more sense for him to have a reaction afterwards and go like, you know what, fuck this program. I need to find someone real or whatever, which is literally what he says, which is a bit like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we get it.
Yeah, they got nice use of the rear view camera, kind of like
great. That's a great shot. Yeah. Like that bit.
And I'm trying to, I forget, there's something else I was going to point out on here. Oh, they're playing the song Common People, which William Shatner did do a cover of with Ben Folds. So, talking about classic sci-fi, I'm sure they put that in on purpose. I'm sure that's what they're going for. William Shatner covered that song.
You don't think it has more to do with Dolores wanting to live with the common people and understand them and like get to know what humans are like?
I think that's secondary.
It's the William Shatner thing?
Because she's not, well, I mean, she's not actually living like common people. She's mowing down people at the moment. I'm sure that's secondary. I think it's first and foremost, it's the William Shatner part of how he covered that song with Ben Folds. Great cover, by the way.
Yeah, he just talks in it, doesn't he? Like he always does.
And I guess the other tough thing is like, some of this stuff, again, this is nitpicking. This is not like would judge if the show's good or bad or not. This is just a nitpick because, you know, we've already set up, we're in this future world, like high technology, there's robots that build buildings. Then a shootout and a car chase happens, and there's literally no one around. Like no one shows up. Drones don't fly in. But like, what? Drop your weapons, or the big thing from RoboCop doesn't come stomping down the alley or something like that. Again, it's not a big deal, but then again, maybe that's just a hint of the simulation that we're running in right now.
Yeah, again, I will turn on this show totally if it's like, no, this was all a simulation. Like I will just flip out over it. Be very annoyed. Like they get to use the simulations again. They kind of have to. They set it up here and everything. But yeah, no, if that's the big thing, I'm not gonna enjoy that at all. I assumed it was more like, yeah, everything's corrupt and crime, so of course they're gonna look away. They probably have an automatic bribing system that just turns off all the police shit.
Although the cops did roll up when they blew up that ATM. Pretty quick, by the way. But then again, that's cash money. Now, who do you think is in the security guy she kills and they bring out like a double ganger? Is that Teddy, you think?
That's a good
question. Did I lose you?
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, there's a bit of a delay, but I'm here.
Because
I'm
just being quiet now.
I think we're both just being quiet at this point.
All right. What I was going to say is kind of going back to what you said. Going back to what you said at the start of the show, like at least even if they don't give us a twist this season, we get to play the guessing games of like, oh, who's who now? Okay, you know, there's Teddy. That's other prostitute girl is, you know, Charlotte or whatever, and they brought Hector out, and he's, you know, here's the Native American guy. They took him from the valley. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that could be kind of fun if they do that. Or maybe, yeah, I guess that's what they have to do, right? Because she's not going to put, because first I was thinking like she'll put a copy of the person, but make the prime directive to do whatever she says kind of thing. But it would be more interesting to see the actors, or the characters rather, from earlier seasons reprise their roles by totally different actors. And that's kind of Black Mirror-y and interesting as well. And also I forgot all the characters, so it won't really be that interesting, but you know, go for it.
Yes, for sure. One thing, and again, I don't mean to nitpick, but I'm gonna. These are long episodes. Come on. I don't think they need to be this long.
Yeah, I thought the first one was longer than it was because it had that sort of behind like preview thing afterwards and everything. Weirdly, I didn't find them that long. I see where you're coming from. I usually would agree, but it didn't hit me that way. But I'm sure that may change. I'm again very happy that they went for 8 episodes, and I'm hoping that will help the structure of the season. And I honestly don't have that much more to say about these 2 episodes besides the fact that I'm excited for the next episode. As we're recording this, it comes out tomorrow, and I'm excited for it, and that's a really nice feeling for Westworld.
Last thing before we wrap up, where you at on Bernard then? Living on a farm for some reason in the first episode, wherever you found that. Going back to Westworld, what's his mission? Where are you on his side? You rooting for him?
Well, I think he kind of like it's a complex thing, but they do say it outright that like Dolores brought me back because she probably subconsciously knew she needed some sort of check on herself. I know Maeve versus Dolores is probably the thing, but I thought and felt more like, yeah, Bernard versus Dolores, that's Magneto, and that's a very like, I don't do that thing anymore. I work in a farm, and it's only because I'm being attacked but that I have to step out of it and become the world's best gunfighter again or whatever. Like all that tropey stuff, which is very like, we've seen it done a million times, but I much prefer Westworld doing those things that I've seen done a million times, but they do it with a high budget and they do it well, over them going, fuck all conventional story structure, we're going to do our own thing, because it doesn't always work out. So yeah, I was like, yeah, of course Bernard's on a farm all grizzled, and he's, you know, looks totally, well, a little bit different. I'm not excited about him and Stubbs. I'm sure they'll ring that for what it's worth. I wasn't like, fuck yeah, him and Stubbs. Didn't miss Stubbs so much. I wasn't like that. And it was also like at the end there where he just overrides Stubbs' prime directive or whatever. Like, yeah, now you're gonna protect me at all costs. I'm like, I guess Bernard's not all about free will then. I'm not sure I agree with that, Bernard, but okay.
Well, and I do like bringing up Stubbs. They didn't quite fully confirm that's well. I mean, I guess they kind of did confirm Stubbs was a host last season, right? But wasn't it still like a weird non-confirmation? But I love how when they bring him in this season.
Jim.
Yeah. What?
No, I was gonna say I was just gonna say Stubbs. I have no idea what they did last season with that. Go on.
I remember they hinted because he like let Dolores go or something like that, and he was supposed to be in charge of like detecting hosts or some weird shit, and then he's the one that kind of lets her pass, and she gets on a boat and leaves. So it was basically confirmed. But I love when they bring him in this season, and he's like bleeding, and then Bernard says something like, "You're one of us," and he's like, "Yeah, no shit." Like it was kind of being like, "All right, we don't need to spend too much time on this. He's a fucking host. Let's get into it already. Let's move on."
What was your take on Bernard in general then, since you asked me?
It's tough because I love that actor that plays him, but I mean, anytime Bernard is always constantly like every season, and especially even now, he's always like, "Who am I? What am I doing? Am I in control or am I not?" Like, so every time you have Bernard, it's always the same thing, and now it's like literally him being like, "Bernard, are you in control?" And Bernard's like, "Yes, I am in control." "Bernard, have you been hacked?" "No, Bernard, I've not been hacked at all."
Yeah. Bernard's always looking at things, going like, "Huh? What? Is there a door there? What? Is this real?" Like he's the audience in there questioning everything, so he doesn't get anything done.
I'm excited to see where we're at with the Man in Black. Because didn't we last leave him? I believe he was in like that training room. Because remember they were training that host to be it was like the CEO of Delos or something like that, and he was stuck in like a white room, and he had to keep going over things. And I think they were like dragging the Man in Black in there. I mean, I probably should know this if we're hosting a podcast, but
Jim, you're giving me flashbacks. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know. I don't want to think about the room with the glass where we spent 4 episodes. I don't want to worry about that. I just want a fun sci-fi story with robots and guys and they fight things. Come on, guys, just make it simple for me. Jesus.
Yep, we'll see. I'm with you. I'm excited. Let's see where this season goes.
And again, they don't have to dumb it down. Like they said, we don't want to dumb it down. Don't dumb it down. Just don't act like it's smarter than it actually is. Don't act like it's going to be a big payoff if it's not going to feel like a big payoff. And so far, all the rewards and everything within this season have felt balanced to me. So we'll see where this goes. Join us next time as we discuss the next few episodes here of Westworld. Of course, you can subscribe to Westworld Theories. We also have Shows What You Know and all of our other shows at showswhatyouknow.com. We have things like Blank Meets Blank, where we basically just brainstorm a new TV show every episode based on some random hat drawings. And we have Real History, where we talk about the history of, the historical context of different movies and TV. And besides that, lots of different TV shows discussed, like we mentioned, Gilead Gazette and all sorts of good stuff at showswhatyouknow.com. But if you have Westworld theories, do send them in to us at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. That's the email address. If you can spell it, you'll get it read out on the show. It's showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com.
Absolutely.
That's it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cool.